Good afternoon and welcome to the Future of Israel. I'm subject of judgments and judging. As you've been with us in our last program, you've heard us talk a little bit about how to righteously judge and how the world and a lot of humanity judges superficially, pretty much cobweb into so many different venues, and that if we're not cautious, it can seriously damage not only our lives, but the lives that we create in relationships. So, my friends, Matthew 7, but in the portions of verse 24, where it talks about the parable of the two builders and the two.
This book was written to the Jews first.
Right.
Some of them rejected it, and it then was go out to the Gentiles. But this, when we read this, this was written to every person that was born. So everything we're saying, and Jesus was and he was Jewish, and the family for everyone. And you know, we're here because we have a heart for the Jewish people to share the truth with them and give them back. They've blessed us so much. People have Israeli, and they think it's say this, we're talking to everyone and talking to the Jewish people. And we start off with, go ahead.
You bring up an interesting point with that, because a great example now as to how the Jewish community with the traumatic pasts of the Jewish lineages and citizens, not only of Israel, but the Jews that are also scattered in other countries. You would think that if it was something made by Jewish hands, that but just in the Jewish community, but here they are freely to give. That's one of the most strongest momentums of love I can think about. That we would love to give you to help you combat an illness that affects everyone.
The mainstream media doesn't talk about it because they got a thing against the Jewish people, and a lot of them are Jews.
But it seems
and
like
they go against their own. They go against their own people.
But it seems like it's not just on the medicinal work. We've had countless inventions by Jewish hands, scholars that have written hundreds of books, professors and teachers that have taught so in the and so many vast genres of craft, to how to just eliminate them out of the world has been mind-boggling to me. As we've also seen judgments How do you think they would take judgment through their view, through the Jewish lens, to outsiders?
But I've been blessed by so many Jewish people in my life that I couldn't do anything else but love them.
I actually think that much of the Jewish community is very non-judgmental to, you know, the beginning of time and all of the and they're always aware of that. Maybe at times almost to the extreme, but they are less likely to judge any in any sect because
Yeah, we talked
personal
about this.
opinion.
When there's started off with don't go shopping, butcher, you know, if you go here, and they'll basically put you out of business for being a Jew and being a Jewish businessman. So it's like on anybody, because, and actually that's what one of the guys I played racquetball with, his father who passed years ago as a Holocaust survivor, and he went around speaking at the universities, and that was really where he was to get an answer to this. Why is everything okay when you still have this and this?
And now we're talking about Old Testament, the Ten Commandments. So not everything.
Keep the law, and the law was for our benefit.
Right.
It wasn't, God didn't want us to have fun. He wanted you, you know, and it goes, when the kids were out playing. Stood around because they didn't know what the boundaries were. So when you know what is good and what is bad, you know what you can do. You know, it'd be cruel to not have any rules and regulations. One of the worst things you could do and messes kids up is to not, gives them that freedom in there to know what to do and what not to do into that. So when they took this fence down, the kids were erect. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know where their boundaries are. Yeah, you know, it goes into where we're going to start with this, the wise and foolish builders. And it says, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rock is Messiah that came. Walking about the out of here, where's his mind, does not put them into practice, is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds raged. Is taught is one who had authority, not as teachers of the law. There's a difference between authority and the law.
Right.
But putting this into practice, when stuff happens, you're going to be still when you come out.
Amen,
God.
amen.
conclusion to say that God had written into the natural law and knitted into the naturalness of our surroundings.
It's a book of this whole book together because he loves us so much that we can't even comprehend it. And he gave us a manual.
What was the question?
It's open-ended.
On a solid foundation and on sand. I kind of always look at it as I'm growing in wisdom with the scriptures, how the spiritual world blends itself into the natural. Spiritual. So it's almost, and so many books come to mind. You've got Job with his experiences. Ants. A couple of you would want to think that the natural world
I think that everything in the natural world is a draw to bring you into the spiritual world. Or bad, to me, it is wooing you into a relationship. Bottom line. So when you walk on this earth in the natural and something's happening or there's a judgment or whatever, and this goes for countries too,
Sure.
you know, you've taken the laws of God out, the country is going.
And we're seeing that even with a lot of laws now that recently come up with, I hate to always talk about the subject of abortion because it's political, but it's also can be, damaging spiritually
Correct,
because of the
yeah.
fruit of the womb being creation. And with the Messiah being our author to the divine and being divine, creating us in his. How many things in the world do we see that from the Ten Commandments spanning into the old books of the Old Testament and even surpass so many things are. They hated Matthew because automatically judged them, where you would think there was a hand. Do you stand the spiritual? where we see now with the lawmakers of our country, and here we are in the Jewish community. How can we be and an alarm to say, stop?
And so, go ahead. You were going to ask me something?
I was gonna say, the way you see the young men in your prison ministry, how the laws have judged them, and here you see them as broken to say, you know what, God does have a higher purpose for you. He hasn't forgotten you.
There's a better way.
Right, there's a better way. So you're literally rebuilding them out of the book of love. That the world,
in that case, the judgment can be love.
right.
So they were judged and they were sent to prison, and most of them will tell you, if we weren't here, we'd be dead. Get them to stop them from a behavior that's bad.
So in that particular instance, the law saved their life.
The law saved their life. The law didn't. And I said this before. You needed a savior.
Right.
But they're still there. But
Yes,
we
but
can't keep them.
those laws are being, and that's where the judgment comes in. If you don't have, again, Old Testament, Moses with the 10 Commandments. 10 Commandments. Those thou shalt not murder. Of what a country is doing. Anything's on the table.
There's no mirror. If you take this out, you can.
Right.
And they want to make everything that they want to do is correct, and whatever. There is no truth anymore, and you can do whatever. And we could feel good about ourselves. But otherwise, our spirit's going to out to me that I God, nothing has changed.
Right. It was that you have that proverbial replacement theology. The mix.
So if they could kill the Jews, what they want to do is kill the Jews and the Christians right now. And Rabbi Eckstein, who passed away, saw that believers in Yeshua were the best friends of them together, and he did. He brought in over $1 billion. People, the Holocaust survivors. Because it does say here in the end times that people are going to come back in one day, which the scripture says, bringing the people back, and the Jews are going back, and you see them and they interview them, and they just come back to Israel. I just wanted to And that's been prophesied here. And that's why we try and get people to read the Bible, because if you read this thing, it's not faith anymore. It shows you stuff that was written and you'd be a fool not to believe it, because it's right there and it's showing you exactly what's happening.
I'm seeing the Jews recently but also from the region.
Really?
So I'm seeing more from those areas, and you would think or maybe from the Central South America, a large amount. With us in the United States, this comfort zone where we have everything, and we missionary for them to fit them back home. That took a world, your natural living, your natural land where you came out of. Israel was the cradle of life, everything, you know, the Middle East.
They're coming from those areas because the persecution is the greatest.
Right.
Persecution is going to increase. You're going to see people that are going to leave. The anti leaving Paris, they're leaving France, they're new to bring them back to fulfill the prophecy that's in here, because and when that comes to be, and then you're going to have the one new man explosion and awakening that we're going to see, that's going to be with all their heart, soul, and mind. When it, you know, and I pray every day for Jerusalem, eyes will be open
Sure.
for the Jewish people, and their hearts and their ears, their mind would be open to see the truth. And you know, and I'll talk about it and say, hey, if you don't think this is a true conversation,
Right.
but I believe this is the truth, and I believe that, and it's called the one new man because it's the old and the new coming together. And that's going to be the most powerful time on earth before the Messiah comes for the second time.
And you said to make the judgment to that just a decision. That's not a judgment. It's a decision. And in the old and new for good and all for love.
How many times have we heard, just in the last few years, hate is increasing, the vileness, destroying public property,
Yes, yes.
And everything.
Mm-hmm.
The Jews, and it's not just from the Holy Land. because in World War II, when but now we've got so much, and I've got to wrap up because we're coming to the
Yeah,
end
we've
of our
got
show.
2 minutes, and I want to fill this in because we got to wrap it in 2 minutes.
What do you want to
But
say?
this is actually says the Yeshua, the Messiah, heals many. It says when the Yeshua came into Peter's house, he saw Peter's mother on him. Now, you love. I thought you get that. So he healed
Drum
the
roll,
mother-in-law.
please.
The guy went with his mother-in-law, and she always wanted to be buried there. And he said, "I'll bury her here." And he said, "We'll do a great job." He said, "Oh boy," he says, "we'll bury her here." He said, "I thought you said you wanted to be buried here and stuff." He said, "Listen, back 3 days later, I get a chance."
Well, folks, on that note, well, we want to thank you for joining us, and thank you for taking time out to be with us to discuss and to unravel out of, to always read the scriptures on your own, not to
Yeah.
just take our perspectives and our words, scriptures yourselves, so that you could see around these words and also the love of our Messiah. We always want to send us a letter or send us an email and write and return a reply to you. Session one time. We always look forward to being with you, and we thank you again for being with us today. May God be you always with peace, love, and prosperity. The Christian community to help the Jewish faith and the Jewish communities as well. And with that, and God be